All right. Happy, well, Sunday now, everybody. I I got to start off by saying I am not a pro YouTuber yet, which is kind of evident in a lot of my videos, but that whole video that I did yesterday, and I was really proud of, I felt like I covered a lot of ground, a lot of material. My mic was muted. And if you've seen a few of my videos, you might remember one way back where I did this before. And in the PS5, there's at least three ways to mute. There's the mute in the actual the console menu. There's a mute on the controller itself, which is a little button that lights up yellow, and there's a third mute on the headphones that I got. So technically, that's not with the PS5. That's with the type of headphones that I have. But anyways, the headphones were muted, and so I have an hour of me just playing, not making any sense. And also, there was a lot of periods of time in there where I was just running around trying to gather my thoughts. So if you're watching that video, which I actually took it down, I mean that's just embarrassing. Like, yes, Minecraft is kind of like a form of meditation, and that's why I love playing it. And that's why it helps me process my thoughts and organize my thoughts. And so let's do a shorter video and try to address all of the key points that I tackled. So here we go. All right. So yesterday's episode was all about, I was musing about communication technology. And again, like that's something else that I keep repeating is I had this class for my undergrad that was very silly and very weird. And I didn't really take seriously at first because I was like, oh, this isn't computer science. I'm not learning how to code. I'm not learning how to work with machines. I'm learning how to work in, like, it was a journalism class called, was it 413? Anyways, it's not important. It was a JTC, a journalism class over at CSU, and it's called Communication Technology. And the first day of class, our professor picks up a pen and says, "This is a communication technology." And we all kind of snickered, like, "Oh, it's just a pen. There's nothing tech about that." Like, I just got back from a computer lab where the computers can process like insane amounts of data, do big data, distributed systems, all that good stuff. And you're telling me a pen? Okay, go on. And so then she's like, since the earliest days of communication, which I believe are the cuneiform tablets from Sumer, were the earliest form of written history where they would keep records in a language called cuneiform, which is like a block-like geometric language. Well, I guess every language is slightly geometric. It's all shapes, right? So anyways, it was like a blocky, um, anyways, it was a form of writing, and it was a way to transport ideas and thoughts and have them persist. So it wasn't just what people remembered and communicated through word of mouth. It was persistent memory, meaning it persisted over time. Well, how much time? That depended on how strong the tablets were, how safe they were stored, how gentle they were handled, because clay tablets are pretty fragile. You accidentally drop them, they'll break. If you get into a war, they'll definitely break. And that's why a lot of history has been lost. There's the Library of Alexandria, I believe, that got burned, and there was a lot of knowledge lost. And now you share anything online, and it's up there for good. I mean, it could be up there for good, potentially. It depends. Depends on who's watching, who's keeping record. I mean, I'm sure it's all stored somewhere, but then the people that actually have access to that, like I have access to a lot of stuff at my work that I would never even look into unless I was prompted, like people's emails and whatnot. Like, I don't have the time, the bandwidth, or the interest. Seriously. Like, people worry about people snooping, and it's like, you talk to the system admins, they're like, no, I could care less what you're saying. Like, as long as you're doing your job and your supervisor is happy and I don't have to like come in and be involved on some like security leak or anything, or, because that's the thing is like when an audit happens, then yeah, you might have to go into things. Like if someone committed a crime, stole something or did something, like you might have to check their email records and stuff. But not a lot of that going on in my work. I work in higher education. So that's not saying that that's like a perfect industry that never has any troubles, but the amount of times that I would have to go through compared to when I worked for an aerospace company, and that if I was on the IT security team, which they had a whole different team to monitor activity and stuff. So, and which I tried. I mean, if I would have stayed around long enough, maybe I would have been able to, but I didn't really last long at that company. I wasn't really happy with the pay, and they found out I was looking for other work. So yeah. Anyways, back to communication technology and why it's so important in society today. So with communication technology, you can avoid a lot of inefficiencies. You can avoid a lot of arguments. Just negative interaction. Communication has been important throughout all of history and beyond, and it's gotten easier nowadays because not only do most people that interact with foreign people, well, speak English, and that it's not necessarily great. I mean, yeah, it's great for functionality, and I'm lucky enough to have been born in a place that speaks English, but I feel for all those people that have to learn English as a second language. Specifically, I had some roommates in college from Saudi Arabia, and they spoke very good English. Like you could almost not tell sometimes. I mean, yeah, they'd have an accent every now and then, but it'd be like you're speaking as well as I do sometimes, and you're understanding like slang and terms. Anyways, my point is since people have taken the initiative to learn another language, and I speak Spanish too, but I'm not off trying to study in a Spanish-speaking country. So I commend people that study abroad and try to learn in foreign countries where the language of the land isn't necessarily the language that they grew up speaking. So, and then with communication technology, and love them or hate them, the whole Elon thing, and it's very sad. I did address this in that, big old hour-long video last night. It was like, I like Elon. I will still be his support like that. He has done things that a lot of other rich people didn't do. Like, I mean, he was born into wealth or whatever happened. I don't know the story. I don't care. I care about his actions and him building Tesla. Well, building it or stealing it. Even if he stole the company, he's in charge of the biggest electric vehicle company in the world. And he has been pushing that. And yeah, they're super expensive, but look what he's doing with all that money. He's flying rockets and saving NASA millions of dollars, doing experiments and like studying technology, rocket technology that is going to be used for interstellar travel. Well, hopefully, I don't know. I'd have to look to see how long the estimated travel time is to Mars. But the point is Elon's out there doing it. He could just be living on a yacht somewhere, like having 50 wives or something and like living the supposed dream of a lot of people that, oh, sorry, not a lot of people. That's very sexist. But if he was a woman, he could be having 50 husbands or 50 wives, whatever. I don't judge. But like, or he could be having 50 husbands. I don't judge, don't care. But my point is he could be out there living a lavish lifestyle, not doing anything. And he's out there taking a lot of ridicule, took over Twitter, which is the biggest communication tool on earth. I mean, you could say True Social, you could say Blue Sky, you could say Mastodon, and it drives me nuts. Like just because he's like leaning Republican now, a lot of Democrats just bailed on him. Like they forget, and I swear I saw him on like one of the presidential committees, or maybe he was an advisor to the Obama administration or something. And he definitely has a lot of interaction with the government. They give him a lot of kickbacks for his electric vehicles, and rightfully so, because pollution is bad no matter what you think about climate change. You can't sit in a garage with a gas vehicle running, you die. And people think, oh, but it's okay when it's outside, it just goes out into the air. Well, what do you think we breathe? Like, it doesn't just completely disappear. This isn't that Jack Black movie with A-Rye, where you spray it and the dog poo disappears. And anyone who's seen that movie, I honestly can't forget or I can't remember what it's called, but there's a twist. It doesn't actually vaporize. Like, it actually pollutes the world and it's all horrible or something. So it's like, you gotta get the full story. And with gas vehicles, that said, I have seen some concerning studies, and I don't know off the top of my head that climate change isn't accelerating at the rate that we thought it was, and it's not as dangerous, but it's still dangerous, and I've seen all sorts of conflicting things. So that's something I would like to see just explained as if I were five. Like, if we could get, like, Neil on it, good old Neil Tyson deGrasse. And that was something else I said in there. I totally butchered his name, so, and I just deleted the evidence of it. Well, actually, wait, there was no evidence because I was muted. Never mind. So communication technology. The importance of communication technology is it, if used properly, it could avoid war. It could avoid famine. It could avoid drought. It could avoid everything because we are at a point in society where we have tools and technology. We have the power, like the work power. We've got people willing and able and healthy enough to go and do these things, to go help other countries. We just need to communicate better. And I honestly believe that a lot of the sketchiness that's still going on in the world is due to poor communication, like misunderstandings or didn't spend enough effort in the communication to broker a peace agreement, or whatever the case may be. And just misunderstandings are basically keeping us in a dark age of sorts, where if we had clear and open communication, especially voting too, oh my gosh, like, oh, in our politics, that's why, like, I was really excited about, wait, let's unload that. I was really excited about the video I did yesterday because I tackled a lot of issues, politics specifically, and analysis paralysis. Like, I've been loosely following some news, specifically marijuana legalization across the country of the United States. So for anyone watching outside of the U.S., that's where we're at. And yeah, and it's a really exciting time because, I don't want everybody to just go be a stoner and all this, but alcohol destroys lives, and people know this. And then when people say, "Oh, but what if there's a safe, healthy alternative? Let's legalize marijuana and let people smoke instead of drink." And it's like people just get outraged, like, "How dare you? Outrageous!" Like, but then it's like we've got mothers against drunk driving. We don't have mothers against stone driving. And some people might argue, be like, "Oh, well, that's because it's illegal. Not as many people are out there smoking and driving." Well, that's just simply not true. People are out there doing crack cocaine and driving. Like, let's be real. But the amount of drivers on the road smoking versus drinking, you're right, it's a lot higher with the drinking, but the actual fatalities and the crashes and the accidents of someone smoking versus someone driving, I would have to see the studies, I would have to see the data, but according to all my law enforcement buddies, very low. And I know, like, that's not scientific at all. That's just word of mouth through buddies. But something they do tell me, all my cop buddies, they say, "Oh, 9 times out of 10, I would rather deal with someone who's stoned than someone who's drunk." Like, it's almost always a better experience. They're more friendly. They're more willing to be like, "Oh, okay, you're right. Well, let's go. Let's go to jail or whatever." And like, whereas drunk people, you don't know if they're starting fights or like raping people or committing like all these other crimes, or, a stoner, maybe they stole a candy bar. Oh, oh gosh, how will we ever rebuild society? Whereas, if someone gets raped, like, phew, that could ruin their life, at least for several years, if not forever. The PTSD associated with that, depending on the severity and the violence aspect of it. Yeah. So sorry, there's my little soapbox with common sense substance laws. Like, like I said, I'm not trying to get everybody to go out and party and be a stoner and all that, but my family's been affected by alcohol. I've lost two members of my family, my dad and my grandpa, to drunk drivers and suicide. So yeah, alcohol to me is kind of a clear and present danger and a threat in the wrong hands. Well, everyone's hands are wrongs if you've had too much to drink. We all know this. Anyone who's had alcohol is like, yeah, it's a very slippery slope. And like one or two drinks could mean the difference between you having a nice cordial evening with the governor or you dancing with a light shade on your head naked. Like, especially if like tequila or hard liquor's involved, or vodka or champagne, or, it doesn't matter how fancy you get with it. Hard alcohol at the end of the day is hard alcohol, and it's much easier to abuse and accidentally overuse, however you want to say it. But anyways, back to communication. Without communication, we wouldn't understand these things. Or, ooh, here you go, legalizing mushrooms. Colorado just legalized them to study them and their effective use in treating depression, PTSD, and even addiction. Yes, you heard that right. Mushrooms can actually help treat addiction to cigarettes, alcohol, and hard drugs. So just the communication of being clear of what drugs you're talking about, what substances, because I don't even like saying drugs because alcohol is a substance that is very dangerous and very damaging. And people, just because it doesn't have the label drugs, people don't think that it's as dangerous. Or maybe they realize it's dangerous, but it's in a different category. It's like, oh, you can go pick that up at the corner store, so it's fine. Like, no, if meth was available at the corner store, which it used to be available in gas stations, they nixed that real quick because they realized, oh, this makes you act really sketchy. You end up trying to get more and more of it. It's a very addicting chemical, like, just like cigarettes. They worked on cigarettes for hundreds of years. Like, oh, okay, maybe not. Maybe like almost a couple hundred, at least. Anyways, my point being is cigarettes have had a lot of study, a lot of investment, a lot of research done to make them as addicting as they are. And, of course, people are out there protesting and complaining, but big business is just rolling along like, oh, lung cancer, all these people dying when they're getting older, like, oh, that's no biggie. Birth defects from pregnant mothers smoking, little kids getting secondhand smoke. Oh, that's fine. They're tough it up. But oh, God forbid, someone smokes a little bud. Like, oh, you're going to jail. And it's like, what if you smoked a cigarette in a car versus a joint in the car? No, I'm not saying that, kids should not use any kind of substances. They're not fully developed until mid to late 20s. So let's just get that out of the way. Because I don't want anybody saying, oh, A-Rye condones kids doing drugs. No, absolutely not. There's a lot of kids out there drinking alcohol because it's everywhere, stealing from their parents' liquor cabinet, having their friends bring it to school, getting drunk at the prom, like at the dance, whatever. Like, yeah, now, when my kids get to be that age, I would much rather find out that they were smoking bud with their friends at prom than out drinking and driving and possibly crashing and dying. Like, and granted, yeah, driving on with marijuana, like they could crash and die just as easy. I understand that. But it's much, much, much more likely. In fact, I've lost friends from drunk driving. I mean, my buddy, right in high school, we had just graduated and we were working the summer, both doing construction. And he was on the concrete crew, and I was on the framers. And he was at a party one night. It was actually one of the parties that I happened to miss. Happened to miss. I missed a lot of the parties. I wasn't really. Anyways, neither here nor there. It was a party in the woods, and they needed to do a liquor run. And he was drunk, and then he decided to drive, and he took our buyer at the time into town to get some alcohol. Well, he crashed. Our buyer got put in the hospital, ended up suing the deceased's family for the hospital bills. So that was a huge, ugly to do. And at the same time, he was breaking the law for providing alcohol to minors. And then my buddy was breaking the law for drunk driving and crashed and killed himself. So, and I actually spoke at his funeral. And that was my last memory of high school before I came to college. It's like, oh, sorry, buddy. We played football together. We had some great times, like grew up together. But now you stay here in the ground while I go off to do amazing things. Like, it haunts me. Like, and I'm glad that I survived, but, and I'm not a religious man. I don't pray a lot, but I've lost a lot of friends to alcohol, and it's just like, I worry about them, Anyways, communication. So let's get back to that. So we're talking prohibition of alcohol back in like the 20s or whatever it was, and gangsters form and everything's all bad. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, that's alcohol. And then marijuana, there's a whole thing. But they don't realize, put two and two together, be like, oh, wait, prohibition doesn't really work. People still get it, and it adds an element of violence and corruption. And, ooh, then I wonder how many, like, politicians, if we actually did, like, a polygraph test on every politician, have you ever done drugs in your life? Oh, you would see so many of them say yes to marijuana. Like, Bill Clinton didn't inhale, but George Bush, there's rumors of him doing coke in college. Like, come on. This is the president, and like we're throwing people in prison for 5 years for a quarter size. Oh, and that was the other thing too. The Twitters is a dumpster fire. I was just recently speaking up about LGBTQ and trans rights because I'm a supporter of if you want to do it, that's your right, your freedom. I'm totally fine with that. I understand the argument with sexualization with drag shows for kids. That's not good either. It's not. Oh, binary bias. So binary bias is a concept that I kind of made up. I've heard it called the strawman argument, but anyways, binary bias in my mind is where it's a black and white situation. If you're not of one group, then you're automatically of the other. Say if you support marijuana legalization, oh, that automatically makes you a stoner. Or if you are against abortion, you're automatically a Republican. Or if you're with the church, you're automatically against contraceptives. And that's actually not true. I have friends that are in the Catholic Church, and they're totally fine with every contraceptive up until the sperm touching the egg. So up until, oh, it's not conception, it's whatever. Anyway, up until that, the joining of the two things, like, anyways, I digress. Like, without proper communication, a lot of people don't understand this, and they're, hold on. Without proper communication, actually, let's see here. Without proper communication, people are easily susceptible to fall for a binary bias argument, meaning if someone only gets to tell you one little snippet of stuff, their opinion or their view on a matter, then you might automatically think that they're for the opposite. Like if they don't support this, then they automatically are against it, or there's no real gray area. And that's dangerous because most of us do live in a gray area. When presented with things, with facts and situations, we try to make our best judgment, but I mean, all of us are susceptible to binary bias. Like, if it's not one thing, it must be the other. And yeah, especially when it comes to politics, because we have such a two-choice system. Like, if you're not with me, you're against me type situation. And that's just dangerous in itself because almost none of us are completely with one party or the other. Like, there are things with both political parties that bother a lot of people, most people, but that also doesn't come out until it's easily communicated or it's easy to understand. And that's the other side of communication. It's not just can you transmit information, does it get received and does it get translated or understood or deciphered? Like, so yeah, communication technology is possibly the most important technology in the world. So yeah, that was actually basically it. It was an hour of me ranting and talking about communication technology, but I did have some good points, and I feel like that was some information lost when I recorded without sound. So, I mean, it's happened before. Like, it won't be the last time, I'm sure, too. I need to get better at my video editing, and I apologize for everyone that's, for the real ones that are here. I've got, 138 subscribers. I don't know if I'll blow up anytime soon, but, like, you're here at the ground level. So if I do ever get big, and then you'll know, old A-Rye, he had some good thoughts. He had some weird thoughts, and I'm not sure how I feel about a lot of it, but the few, all right. Anyways, we'll probably call that good. So just to recap, communication technology, it's everything from a pen to an email to a encrypted ciphertext to nonverbal communication and body gestures. So, which is another reason I think people like streamers so much because they get to see the person and interact with them on that level rather than just some voice talking over some gameplay like I do. But this is more comfortable to me and I'm able to discuss things a lot easier. That's why I think a lot of people do podcasts is because they don't really have a face for TV. No, that's a mean thing to say, but maybe they just don't have the nerves for it. Like they don't want to have their face out there. So, and which I don't know, it's fine for me. I don't really mind it too much, but I can't concentrate as much if I'm worried about my appearance or something. Like when I talk to people in person, it might not necessarily be as in depth of a discussion as, these musings. So, anyways, binary bias. Now, many people, and it's not the best name, and I'm trying to think of a better one, but as a computer scientist, binary notation is very common, and it's where you have either one or the other choice. It's two choices or a base two number set, so just zeros and ones. Whereas a decimal, which is deca 10, has 10 options for each digit, 0 through 9. And that's just, a brief rundown of that. But binary bias is a concept that I definitely didn't come up with it, but it's how I'm trying to communicate this bias. And it's where if you're not in favor of one thing, you're automatically against it. Or if you're in favor of this other thing, you're automatically against this other thing. So, and that's damaging to society. It's wasteful, it's inefficient, and it often leads to a lot of anger too, because then you accidentally pigeonhole them into that choice, whether they say so or not. And then oftentimes, they'll clear the air if you're talking to them or if you have a good line of communication with them. They could be like, oh, no, I'm actually not really in favor of that either. This is what I think, and it's that, it's kind of like, what is that, TCP versus UDP, the send. Anyways, a brief description of that is there's two different ways of data transfer over the internet protocol, over IP, over the internet, and that is TCP versus UDP. I forget what TCP stands for, and UDP is like Uniform Data Packets. So basically, think about Netflix as UDP. It's just a fire hose of data thrown at the user, and if you miss a scene or two, no biggie. Like you'll see the next scene, so it'll just seem like a little glitch or a little blip. In fact, you've probably seen it happen on these things a lot. When they're uploading or recording, hopefully not recording, but little bits and pieces can get lost. And the way that UDP works is they don't care. Like if you lose a couple packets of data, that's fine, whatever. The majority of the movie made it, the customer's happy, whereas TCP waits until every data packet is received. See, that's why it's something transmission control protocol or something, I don't know, but it's basically where if it was happening with this, it would be horrible because if like say this scene right here got dropped, you would have to sit and wait. It would freeze until the sender sent that data packet again, because the receiver would be like, wait a minute, I didn't get this packet, because they're all numbered, you know, so the receiver and the sender know what makes and what doesn't, and you never know what's happening on the network between points A and B. You know, there could even be a spot where it's carrier pigeon, not really, but that is one method of communication that we've used in the past, and it's definitely something that we might use in an apocalyptic future, but I digress. So TCP versus UDP, and especially in communication with one-on-one person communications. If it's just UDP, like I'm doing right now, I'm talking at you, then there's no real response until you comment down below. You know, you can comment your ideas and be like, oh, well, what about this? And then I can send you some confirmation or some clarity. Like I can be like, oh, no, no, no. What I meant by this was this. And that's why two-way communication is key. You know, you could have people talk at you all day. You can learn a lot from it. But at the end of the day, like, it's really beneficial to be able to confirm things, to clear up things, rather than just accept it as what your understanding was, whether it's accurate or not, and move on. That could lead to inefficiencies and problems down the road. And yeah, and when you start learning computer science, these are things that you have to take into consideration. Like, okay, so I'm solving this problem with this coding language or this technology stack. Like, okay, I did this. Now, what happens if this happens? Or what happens if we didn't get the correct information or we didn't get any information? Like, what do we do then? So these are all blind spots and corner cases that you have to program for when you're developing technology. So, yeah. Yeah, that was about the gist of it last night. There you go. A nice little short video. Communication technology is very important. Elon Musk is an okay guy. Like, stop hating on him just because he's trying to help out the world. Like, you know, he really is. He could be out there pulling a Cheney and developing weapons of war for a living. Like, granted, he did provide communication, which super effective and important for Ukraine during this whole crisis that's going on there. But then he also said something like, well, I don't want it used for war, and you're using it to communicate with the front lines. Well, clearly, I mean, but at the same time, it's like, where is your ethics in that? And I don't know. I think he's like most of us that just wants to stay out of it. Like, I don't want people to die. That's my take on the Ukraine crisis. I support Ukraine. I'm mad at Putin. I support Russia. I feel for them losing all of their stuff because they got a bunch of sanctions and embargoes and all those fancy things that just hurt the people as a whole based on what their leader is doing. You know, I don't think that's really fair. But anyways, I'm not going to get into that today. Whatever you feel about the Ukraine crisis, I'm in the opinion that nobody should be dying, especially in this day and age. We should not have war. We should not have guns. We should not have, oh, and that's going to upset some people. We need the guns until we get to the point where war is obsolete. But until the boogeyman of, you know, a possible invader is gone and doesn't exist anymore, people are going to feel the need to secure themselves. So, I don't know. Oh, student loans. Let's actually get back to that real quick, because that is one thing that I touched on last night. So student loans. I understand people that hold the loans to pay back the loan that they agreed to. I also understand the people holding the loans wanting the prices not to be so outrageous. And there's a nice handy chart from the White House that shows how effective the Pell Grant was. And the Pell Grant is a grant for people that come from a lower income household, like myself. I was a recipient of the Pell Grant. I grew up not exactly rich, so. And yeah, and granted, I'm in a good spot where I can pay off my loans now. It's going to take some time, but I'm finally in a good career, a good tech career where I can do that. Now, a lot of people can't do that. They went from a poor household into college, maybe didn't graduate. Now they're stuck with all this debt and no skills or, well, less skills than a graduate and no accreditation of a degree. So already it's going to be harder for those people. And it's like it's going to take a long time for them to come back from that when we should be just, well, a couple of things. The cost of tuition needs to come down. Oh, okay, wait. Nonprofit versus profit. Let's go over that too, because that is one thing I talked about last night. So nonprofit, education, law, and healthcare should all be nonprofit industries. And here's why. Because they are life, liberty, and property, the unalienable rights here in this country, yet we tax them. We allow companies to profit off of them and make it a business. Now, nonprofit educational institutions, they still pay their people, they still pay the bills, they still keep the lights on. The only difference is they're not out like building fancy football stadiums. And that's one thing I mentioned in last night's thing that didn't make it. I went to one football game in my career at college. One. and they built this mega stadium. Granted, they said it was paid for by, various donors and alumni, and I get that, but I feel like I heard somewhere that they also charged us. Like part of it was our tuition was to go for sports fees and, and that. And so, yeah, for the people that do enjoy sports, okay, great. But for the rest of us that are still paying ridiculous amounts of money, maybe we shouldn't be charged that. And if everything was nonprofit, not everything, these three industries, if they were nonprofit, the professors would still get paid, the staff would still get paid, but at the end of the day, the college students would only pay for what they need. Like some Liberty Mutual there. Anyways, maybe they'll sign me on as for an ad or commercial, but no. Seriously though, education, law, and healthcare. Now I say law because say someone makes a mistake, and remember back to my other musing where we really shouldn't be pigeonholing people into labels like felon or criminal because it's unfair, it's damaging, it's harmful. Oh, whoops. Sorry, bud. You can go there. It's not night yet. But anyways, pigeonholing, it's dangerous. But if we were able to change that, it wouldn't be as dangerous for people that commit a crime because they could move on with their lives, do their time, and be done with it. But now imagine someone who's trying to go to college gets in trouble, gets a criminal record, and then drops out of college and can't afford it there. Okay, so now you've got a criminal record and debt and all this, and your lawyer costs what, like 5, 10 grand? I mean, I know a lot of people that got DUIs in college for like driving just over the limit. Like I even had one friend where the cop joked and said, "Well, if you would have waited an hour, you'd be fine." And it's like, wait, really? Like 1 hour is the difference between you're gonna hand me my keys and I could go drive versus I could drive, probably have like a 95, 98% success rate, given random acts or other people's faults that weren't even involving you or something. Like, so anyways, I digress. I don't, you all know me. My stance on alcohol is I'm not a fan. So, but since alcohol is the only legal substance that we really have to recreate with, and people can go and hang out in the bars and drink alcohol, and that's all they got, it's kind of like entrapment. Like, and actually, this one was like the cop, not entrapment, but the cop was waiting outside of the bar for people that were driving from the bar and was basically pulling over most of the people he saw driving away from the bar just to check. And we here in Fort Collins were the number one DUI capital of the country for like 3 years there. I don't know. I think that was one of my other friends. He was in a party class and told me that statistic. And it's like, wow, really? Like people are getting DUIs worth like, I don't know, like $10,000 to $15,000 of punishment. And just for like, stamp, no erases, childish games. Like, oh, if you wait an hour, if you go stand on the blue square, like then, I'm exaggerating, but that's how silly it is in my mind. And that's revenue. That's revenue for law enforcement. My buddy paid, over $10,000 in court fees and, the judicial system paid for the court costs, like probation and all that, paying someone else's salary. So, and I get it, like these funds are paying someone's job, but at the same time, it should all be nonprofit, like lawyers. And if education was nonprofit, the lawyers would come cheaper. And if the lawyers came cheaper, lawyer fees would come cheaper. Oh, and pro bono. Sorry, that was another thing we talked about yesterday. Like a lot of lawyers do pro bono work, for good publicity, and it's effective. That is something in business you take into account your publicity or your public facing factor, and that is a value that you can account for. But they have to do a bunch of pro bono work because people simply can't afford to stay out of jail. Like they can't afford a lawyer most times. Like and then they get a public defender, which may or may not be experienced, may or may not be even on their side. I don't know. And also for anyone who's a fan of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, that's like the whole premise of Better Call Saul. Well, not the whole premise, but one of the main characters in there is avid about pro bono work and helping the poor people that can't afford a good lawyer. And it's all like, oh, why isn't everybody doing that? Why does it have to be like the criminal lawyer's girlfriend lawyer like doing this stuff? Like, anyways. And that's the reason for a lot of crime. People have to think outside the box and bend the rules, break the rules to even just make things work with this control structure. So I digress. And I'm here in Colorado. We're fixing a lot of that. We just legalized mushrooms for treatment of hard drugs, like it treats addiction and all that. We legalized weed. I mean, and we've been doing great because of it. Our schools are funded so much. I mean, it's super expensive. There's a lot of taxes that go into cannabis, but that's fine. I mean, the people that are enjoying cannabis instead of alcohol because Not many people are wealthy enough to afford both, and if you are, that's kind of dangerous. I mean, alcohol mixed with anything is, yeah, it's not good. So, anyways, I digress. But we're working on it. We're also the number one state in the country for crime. Again, not because we're so dangerous, but because we arrest everybody and we pull over everybody. So everybody's going on probation. Not really, but that's what it feels like sometimes. It's like, you toe the line, there's a good chance someone already knows about it and they might be busting you. Or they might not. They might know what you're doing and just kind of let some slide. Like, that was the other thing I talked about and the one that didn't make it last night. Law enforcement and government. Not to seem like an overly paranoid person or someone that's like dangerously paranoid, but it's true. I've seen the capabilities of tech, and it's safe to assume that they know just about everything going on. I know Verizon actually advertised that they are working with law enforcement to cut down on crime using their communication technology. And so, yeah, you just always got to act in non-sketchy ways and just assume that whatever you're doing and saying is being viewed by others. And that's like one of the biggest premises of Christianity. Like, you've got this God, same with Islam. You've got this God watching you, and they're the same God, by the way. It's just one God, the God. I've talked to people. Okay, so I haven't really studied it and talking to like official people, but the people that worship that sect or that religion, we've talked, and it's like, yeah, sounds very similar. Anyways, the idea is, and just like Santa Claus, they're watching you. Be good. And that's the other thing too, is we're growing up as kids, at least here in America, everyone's being watched by, well, not everyone, sorry, Jewish families, they don't celebrate that, but like anyone who believes in Santa Claus is already believing into the idea that they're being watched, they're being monitored. And then kids are already being watched and monitored by their adults and their parents and their family members, all that. And it's like, and then once we reach a certain age and we're like, oh, wait, well, if Santa Claus, then what about Jesus? And that's what a lot of people think. But the fact is accountability. Like, we had to have this empty threat of, like, for the existence of history. All throughout history, we've had this threat of being watched, being monitored. You better not break the law because you're being watched, and you will be judged. You will go to like soul court when you go to the judgment, and you'll either go to heaven or hell, the biggest carrot or the stick, to encourage good behavior. So, like I said, it's a control structure. It's admirable. I mean, it was effective. Now we have a better control structure, technology. We actually have people watching your every movement. There's a traffic cam on every street corner. They can track where you drive, everywhere you go. If you go into a city, or even when you're going across country, like if you're going in a car, if you're going in a plane, it's trackable. You've got a cell phone in your pocket, that's trackable. Like, anyone who's seen Pineapple Express, it it's a joke in there, but it's very true. Like, if the FBI wants to find you, they will run a trace on your phone. Like, and it doesn't matter if you're breaking the law or not, they will have access to. Sorry, I was also building this like second entrance. I gotta fix that up. But yeah, they will find you. So we have a Santa Claus now. We have a Jesus. We have a God. We have, and not saying that I worship tech like a religious thing, but what I'm saying is now we have instant accountability. Oh, I didn't realize I had silk touch on this, so I got my glass back. That's awesome. I always feel bad for breaking the glass because like you take all that time to make it and then it goes away. I'm trying to experiment with different colors here, making them look cooler. I don't know. Plus my snowboard, it's purple and green, like Joker colors. So this is like Jokerville. Yeah, it's coming along. So, anyways, I digress. The importance of communication technology is basically hasn't replaced God and religion, but it has replaced the aspect of instant accountability, or not instant accountability, but pretty much. Like, it takes a lot less time to solve crimes now. I mean, law enforcement has a lot more tools to track you, to track not just you, track the criminal, whoever, sorry, not criminal, person who committed the crime. I'm still learning my own stuff, practicing what I preach and not trying to use labels. But anyways, yeah. So there you go. Technology is the new God. Not really, that could spark a lot of anger, but it is the new accountability tool. You no longer have to worry about some sky wizard watching your stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's how I see it. Is like, you're trying to make me believe that Santa Claus when I'm a kid, and now you're trying to make me believe that Jesus is up there too. And now it's like, okay, wait, Santa Claus wasn't a thing, so wait, Jesus isn't a thing? I mean, what are people supposed to believe? Like, that's the fundamental flaw of the whole holiday festival. Anyways, we could have a whole musings on that, but I digress. I gotta go. Everybody have a great Sunday. And sorry, I'll try to be more careful about putting out videos without sound in the future. All right. See y'all next time.